One former Democratic senator is running full steam ahead in his presidential bid, and he's angling for your support. But how might he size up against some others in his own party? And joining us now, former Democratic Senator John Edwards of North Carolina. He's a candidate for the presidency. Senator, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me, Wolf.
Barack Obama announced today he's creating an exploratory committee after, 2 years in the U.S. Senate. Do you believe he's qualified? He has the necessary experience to be president of the United States?
Well, it won't be my decision to make. I think that it's a good thing to have good people in this race. If you're running for president for the right reason, it's because you want to serve your country and you've decided it's the best way to serve your country. I've thought long and hard about that and made that decision for myself, and I guess it'll be for Senator Obama to decide in the next few weeks whether that's something he believes he should do.
Well, it sounds like you're not convinced that he's necessarily ready to run for the presidency.
Oh, I wouldn't pass judgment on any of the other candidates. I think the campaign is just beginning. Speaking for myself, I'm not exploring. I've made the decision that this is the best way to serve my country, and we'll just see what happens as the campaign goes on. I think we want good people in the race because we desperately need new leadership in 2009.
Here's what you said Sunday in New York City. I want to play this little clip. Listen to this.
Sure.
Speak out and stop this escalation now. You have the power, members of Congress, to prohibit this president from spending any money to escalate this war. Use that power. Use it now.
As you know, that was widely seen as a slap at Senator Hillary Clinton, who has refused to say she's ready to use the power of the purse, congressional authority, to go ahead and stop funding an increase, an escalation or a surge in the war. Did you see that as a direct attack against her?
I wasn't, Wolf, thinking about anybody in particular. It was directed at members of Congress who I believe, as a matter of conscience, should stop this president from escalating this war and from continuing in a long series of really tragic mistakes that he's made in Iraq. And as I said in the clip you just ran, Congress has the power to stop this escalation. It's been done before in Lebanon and Colombia and toward the end of the Vietnam War. I mean, there's an historical precedent for it, and there's clearly constitutional authority for it. It's time for members of Congress, on both sides of the aisle, by the way, not just Democrats, but those who know in good conscience and principle that this war should not be escalated, to speak out and to take action.
Here's what Howard Wolfson, a senior advisor to Senator Clinton, said, reacting to what you said at the church on Sunday. In 2004, John Edwards used to constantly brag about running a positive campaign. Today, he has unfortunately chosen to open his campaign with political attacks on Democrats who are fighting the Bush administration's Iraq policy. Strong words from a senior advisor to Senator Clinton.
Yeah, it sounds a little oversensitive to me. What I was doing, I didn't speak about anybody by name. I talked about members of Congress. By the way, I also spoke to the American people, who I think also need to step up and be heard on this escalation of the war. And I was specifically referencing Dr. Martin Luther King's speech 40 years ago, a year to the day before he died, at Riverside Church, where he spoke out against the war in Vietnam and talked about silence being a betrayal. And that was the theme of what I was talking about. I believe I was right. I stand behind it. We should not be escalating this war. And I hope that members of Congress will have the good conscience and the good sense to show some strength about this and stand up to the president and stop him.
Some of your critics will say, you know what, John Edwards is no longer in the United States Senate. He really doesn't have to vote on this issue. It's easy for him to say it. It's much more difficult for Senator Clinton or Senator Barack Obama or Senator Kerry, who actually have the responsibility of providing funds, if you will, for U.S. troops to vote on these kinds of life and death matters. What do you say to those critics?
I say, first of all, when I had the chance to vote years ago on the funding of the war in Iraq, $87 billion at the time, and I thought the president was headed on the wrong course. It turns out, unfortunately for other country, that I was right. I voted no. I am now a candidate for President of the United States, Wolf, and I'm going to be held accountable for the positions I take. And I think it is important for those who want to have a leadership position, whether it's in the Congress or whether they end up running for President of the United States, not to be being careful and cautious and weighing their options. Now's the time for leadership. America needs leadership. The world needs leadership from us. And we need to have the strength of our convictions. Now's the time to stand up and speak up.
Senator McCain says to those Democratic critics and other critics, if you don't like the president's policy, offer one that you do like. Give us in a nutshell what you would like to see happen over the next few months as far as U.S. troop levels, the war in Iraq are concerned.
40 to 50,000 troops out immediately. Second, a direct conversation with Maliki and the Shia-led government, saying there is no military solution in Iraq. You are going to have to bring the Sunni into this government in a serious way in order for there to be a political solution, in order for there to be reconciliation, which the Baker Study Group talked about, shifting the responsibility to them, continuing the withdrawal of American troops over time. And then last but not least, we can't just deal with our friends in the regions, the Saudis, the Egyptians, the Jordanians. We ought to be dealing directly with the Syrians and the Iranians, because at the end of the day, the Iranians, what they really want, I think, is managed chaos in Iraq. They don't want complete chaos. They are in the Shia minority, as you know very well, Wolf, and a widespread Middle East conflict is not in their interest, certainly not before they have a nuclear weapon, if they get one. So they're in a position that we at least have some potential for having them help stabilize Iraq, but it will never happen so long as we are an occupying force there.
The Republican leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, the other day when I interviewed him, said, you know what, over the past 5 years since 9/11, there has been no terrorist attack on U.S. soil, and the president deserves credit for that. Do you think the president deserves credit for that?
You know, I think it's a combination and American people know this, it's a combination of some good things that we have done. We have taken some positive steps to improve our security here at home. We still have huge holes in our security, which have been talked about repeatedly. And some of it, I think, is luck. So I think it's a combination of some positive steps that have been taken, not just by the president, but by the American people and by our government. But also, I think we've been lucky up until now. And I think what's happened with this situation in Iraq is we've created a breeding ground for terrorists. And what's happened specifically in the case of Al-Qaeda, instead of them being a top-down organization, they've been much more dispersed, and they are still extraordinarily dangerous.
We got to go, but can we expect to see you at the first presidential debates in New Hampshire, April 4th and 5th? CNN's going to be co-sponsoring those debates with WMUR Television and the New Hampshire Union Leader. Are you going to be attending those presidential debates?
I'll be there.
Okay, Senator, we'll see you in New Hampshire, if not sooner. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks, Wolf.